Hey guys, this is Matt. Welcome back to my workshop today because we're going to be finally taking apart this wiring harness. I just want to clean it up, make sure, there's some wires that have been damaged by the fire that was in the car. But I also want to go through and get off most of this old foam. I did spend some time this week looking at it, and it's not really terrible, but I can only imagine that that's going to continue to fall apart over time. And after we, clean this dash up, I don't want this falling apart everywhere. So I think what I'll do is I'll just start at this end and just go, branch by branch off the main wiring harness. And I'll just use razor, electrical scissors, snips, whatever I need. Now, I'm not going to completely separate the harness unless there's an area that the wires look like they're damaged. Like here, it looks like a wire's been nicked. So that'll have to get, probably see how bad it is and maybe see if I can get some heat shrink over that, or see if this connector can come off pretty easy and get that repaired. Hopefully this doesn't uncover too many significant issues. Like I said, I think for the most part, just getting this off, checking everything out, bundling everything back together. I do have it's like a foam Tesa tape. It's very soft and sticky. And so anywhere that I take this foam off, I'll basically just replace it with this so that we don't have any rattles or vibrations. It won't obviously be as substantial as what came on the factory, but I still think it'll work just fine if we double it up as we go. I'll probably start right here where this is the plug that goes to the e-brake, the brake light sensor. That looks like it's been scorched pretty well, and there's a big blob of plastic melted onto the end of the connector. The connector looks okay, and the wire looks okay. It just seems like some of that plastic that melted from the dash center console got onto this. So I'm not 100% sure how I'll be able to get that off. I don't know if it's brittle enough to kind of just crack off, or let's see. Yeah, so I think if I'm careful, I can just go around and try to snip it off. And then once this is off, I'll have to replace it with some heat shrink. Where the shrink wrap or whatever was over this wire, it actually got hot enough that it fused with the sheathing on the wire. So I've got a couple of inches here of exposed wire, so I'll have to probably see if I can fit a piece of shrink wrap over this. I know I could just cut it and redo it, but this connector looks a little bit different than a standard spade connector, though a standard spade connector might work. But yeah, I'll have to get some heat shrink and cover that, and then we'll rewrap it with the Tesa tape. But getting this foam off, it looks like it's going to be quite the challenge. The foam comes off pretty easy, but the adhesive backing does not. So I'm going to have to figure out exactly what I want to do, just because if I have to sit and scrape all the adhesive off of every bit of this, that could take forever. As you're going through the wiring harness, you obviously want to go kind of piece by piece so that you don't get any wires bundled up incorrectly. When you get to a unique, I think this, of course it's melted, but I think it'll still work. This is the connector that goes down, I think, onto the transmission tunnel, where all this goes down into the console. But I'll need to make a mental note of how this goes on there, or in the orientation, so that when we tape this back up, we can tape this, because this is probably taped on top of the wiring harness. But this is going to be a tedious project, so I'll probably just turn the camera off and just update you guys as I go along, just because it's going to be messy and it's probably not going to be all that exciting. So I'll go ahead and try to get all this cleaned up, and then I'll check back in a few minutes. I've been at this for a while, and this was a section that was burnt near the transmission tunnel. I think the wires are kind of wrapped in like a thicker plasticky kind of rubber shielding, and then it's wrapped in electrical tape. That, I mean, it was all just melted, and luckily, except for this one wire right here, the wires are fairly unscathed. There's a few of them where I just left some of the burnt sheathing on there. I didn't feel like pulling that off, but right here, this wire had pretty much all the actual sheathing for that individual wire had melted, and I couldn't save it. So instead of cutting it and doing a butt connector, I spiral cut a piece of heat shrink and kind of wrapped it around there, and then, you know, applied heat and this electrical tape, just a little extra step. But this is extremely sticky and messy, so I'm definitely not going to take this off anywhere that it doesn't look like there's any, you know, reason for me to inspect the wires. But, you know, this was an area that was burnt. I don't think I'm going to have any other places like this. I'll go ahead and bundle this up, and then there were actually two different fasteners that go back in there, but anyway, I'll get this bundled up. I'm through about half the harness. I just found a good stopping point right here last night, and so I'll have to try to finish this half today. I'm through my first roll of the Tesa tape. I've got 4 more, so I think I've got plenty to get through this project. You know, it's taking quite a while to clean off all that foam. It really wants to stick to pretty much everything, and it's just taking your time. And really, once you get the bulk of it off, so just, you know, taking that kind of chunk off, and then this stuff here, it just kind of peels back, and just with the friction of your finger, eventually it peels off. But it just takes a while to get through there, and I've had to stop and fix a few things along the way. I had a ground, I don't know what happened, it just kind of fell off, so I don't know if it was already fatigued or if there was something else, but I went ahead and put it on a new connector. I spent the time and put some foam on some of these bigger connectors so that when they're connected back to the dash, they don't rattle. Tedious cleaning and taking apart, and I'm trying to do a good job of, you know, replacing the connectors, which ultimately, if I have to cut those loose and readjust them, it's not the end of the world. I'm attaching those separate from the rest of this. One more thing I'm going to track down is some of the light bulbs. Some of the sizes, well, they were hard to read, but they're kind of, I can't quite tell what size they are. I know 74 is probably the most common size for the dash, but some of them are really tiny. So I'm going to do some research tonight and find all the bulbs. I may just replace all the bulbs in the dash. Go ahead and do it while it's apart. Anyway, I'm going to continue trying to take this insulation and foam off, and then rewrapping it, and then hopefully the next update I'll be completely done. After maybe 8 to 10 hours of work, I finally have the entire harness rewrapped, everything cleaned up. Anything I needed to fix, I fixed. I haven't quite decided what I'm going to do with the head unit in the car yet, so I'm not going to mess with that right now, and that can be put in after the fact. The hardest part was getting all that old foam off, and it just really, the best thing was just grabbing it and pinching it off in pieces, and then, you know, using a rag or your fingers to kind of rub the rest of the residue off. I don't know if this would be worth it for everybody. In my case, that foam smelt really bad. I don't know if it's just years of whatnot. I don't know if anybody ever smoked on the car, or the fire damage or whatever. So I think the car will smell a little bit better, hopefully, now that that's out. But like I said, I pretty much went through and fixed everything. I even retained the factory label here. I'm glad that's done, because I've been asking myself for the last 2 days why the hell I even decided to do this, but it's a relief knowing that it's done. Hopefully I didn't, pull any of the pins or anything, so we'll definitely test this out before we fully button up the dash, but that's done. So I'm gonna go ahead and start laying this back into the dash, probably start on one end and start clipping it into the mounting points, and then trying to fish some of these back through where they need to go. I'll set you up on the tripod, and I'll go ahead and start getting all this put back together. took some back and forth going back and look at my old video to make sure that I had some of this area routed correctly with the wire harness, and it's really not that complicated because there's only certain places that some of these will clip in. So I think I've gone back through everything and I think we're good. I'm still trying to get some LED bulbs to put in the light bulb socket, so I'll plug that in once that bulb is installed. And the two wires that I bundled up here were the one for the center amplifier and then the wire that went down to the speaker. So those are bundled up, and like I said, I just didn't want to cut them off because you never know. So that way at least it keeps the whole harness complete, and I wrapped all the connectors so that they hopefully don't get filled with crud over the years. This may need some more sorting out once I actually get it in the car and get everything routed properly. I think I have everything for the gauge cluster routed correctly. I may go through one last time and look for any places that I could get some rattling, or places where the wire harness might want to rub and I can put some extra tape or some foam to help prevent any issues from happening over time. The last thing I need to do for the dash, which I won't necessarily do it right now because I can do that after this is back in the car, but I need to get the HVAC bezel and the gauge cluster. I need to get both of those cleaned up. My HVAC bezel is actually really scratched, and because this is the 1992 version, it's got this smooth finish that's actually it's almost kind of sticky. So I'm going to completely disassemble this, and then I'll probably have to sand this, clean this up. I am missing a few broken tabs, so I'm gonna have to do some figuring out on what I want to do to fix those. I don't know if I can scab on some, try to glue on some more plastic and drill new holes, but the two up here are intact. This needs a really good cleaning, and again, I'll probably replace all the lights that are inside here to LEDs. My gauge cluster isn't in the best of shape. I think in the long run, I'd probably be better off replacing this. The socket that holds the lighter, which the car never had a lighter, which I have gotten a new one, but the socket that holds that lighter is, most of it's missing. And in the front, it's not terrible, but there are some drill holes and things, and it is scratched up in places. So I'll probably eventually want to get a new one. I am considering potentially going to US gauges just so I can get miles per hour. 180 kilometers per hour is like 110 miles per hour. So I'm gonna have to see about getting all this switched over to the US version potentially. For now, I'm probably just gonna redo the lighting on this and put it back in the car. But eventually maybe we'll do some gauge faces. For now, this will go back in the car because really it's all I have and it works fine. So I'm really not sure where this video has been or is going because it took me so long to get this wiring harness fixed, and I found some other issues along the way that I had to go get parts for. So the harness is 100% intact and everything I think is fixed, and I'm hoping that when we plug this back in the car, everything works perfect. And if not, we're gonna have to go through this. But everything worked in the car, at least that I was aware of before I took this out, so hopefully we're okay. I don't know what this means for you guys. I don't know how many of you guys are ever gonna tackle repairing or replacing your wiring harness in your dash, but the concepts here would apply, essentially to an engine wiring harness or any of the other harnesses on the car. You may need some different tape. And I did use almost exactly 2 rolls of the tape and maybe about 4 inches off of a 3rd roll just to cover up these connectors for the center amplifier. But if anyone's curious, the product number is 51608. Again, I'll put the link down below so you guys have it in case you need to find that. So my short-term goal for the car is to get it drivable by the July 4th or the weekend just after July 4th. There's a couple car shows and events that I want to go to. Haltech is having an open house, and so I'd like to get the car at least drivable by then. I won't get everything I want done by then just because I know I just never get the time that I want to get the things done. That means I need to get the battery relocation done, which hopefully that's just figuring out a couple things and getting it installed. And then if I have time, I'm gonna go ahead and get started on putting in the soundproofing and the insulation inside the car, and then I can go ahead and get the carpet in. I think now it's just a matter of cleaning a whole bunch of this stuff. I don't really have to rebuild anything. I know this isn't super exciting content, but it's getting us closer every day to getting the car back on the road. And I think once I've gone through all these projects and I get the car back on the road, I think I'm gonna reduce the scale of some of my projects, because when I do a big project like this, the car ends up sitting in the garage for a month or two, and I really wanna get out and drive it and enjoy it. So having a complete interior will be awesome, and I'll be able to do that. And it'll be a much more comfortable, nice drive knowing that everything's clean and I'm not inhaling dust and crap and whatever else is in the car. We're gonna get there eventually, and you know, once this interior's done, then I'm not exactly sure what'll be next. So as always, I really appreciate you guys interacting with me. If you haven't already, go follow me on Instagram and Facebook, and feel free to send comments, questions, or whatever you've got. Some of the things you guys ask me actually kind of help me steer some of my content, because you know, I see what you guys are interested in, and maybe I can focus on subjects a little deeper than I might just kind of breeze over things. And hopefully the next few videos will show a lot more progress than doing some of the tedious things like fixing this wiring harness. So if you have any questions about this, leave them down below. Otherwise, I'm going to catch you guys next time.